to the CyberVault. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Rubi Arbel. Rubi is CEO and co-founder of Scribe Security, a software supply chain security company. With more than 2 decades of experience in cyber and cryptography, it's fair to say Rubi is very much a guru in the space. And today, we're going to delve into building Scribe Security over the past 4 years, how kind of they're differentiating application security solutions and the challenges, I suppose, that they're overcoming in the market. But Rubi, to kind of kickstart, I'll give you the floor for a moment and maybe give us a bit more of an introduction to yourself.
Sure. Hi, Katie. Thank you for having me today. I'm Rubi. I'm the CEO of Scribe Security. As you mentioned, we are the providers of a very comprehensive platform for software supply chain security, SDLC security, product security, all of this in one place. I have served for a decade and a half in the cyber units in Israel, and then after I retired about a decade ago, I continued to do cyber defense from many angles. I was VP at another cybersecurity company where I founded and ran a business units to protect airliners. And then with my co-founder at Scribe Security, we have co-founded a resilient cybersecurity, which was a cybersecurity professional services firm. And then Scribe Security is a kind of a spin-off of one of the projects there that became a full-fledged software supply chain security platform.
Awesome. Well, I suppose that kind of gives us a good place to kickstart because, like you say, the conception of Scribe's pretty interesting. I think you kind of, you were offering those services, recognized there's a gap in the market, and very much capitalized on that opportunity. So, why don't you maybe kickstart by telling us a little bit more about how that came to be?
Yes, thank you for that question. So, when we were working together on problems, hard problems for really big companies in cryptography and cybersecurity, we have found out that all of our customers in financial services and defense and government and actually tech as a whole were struggling with software supply chain security challenges. And software supply chain security means many things to many people. We're going to talk about it in a minute. But generally speaking, what we found out is that the traditional AppSec market provided solutions only basically for one thing, which is try to understand which known vulnerabilities your products are exposed to. However, there are many attack vectors that attackers are using to get into your environment and tamper with the software that you deliver in order to make it work differently than what the engineers intended. And the vulnerabilities is just one part of the story, and we have came to realize that the current technologies were not delivering on protecting such companies. And part of that, we had a project which was all about detecting and protecting from tampering in files, certain types of files. And we found a very good technology that allows us to make sure that the provenance and the integrity of everything is kept throughout the entire process. And we made 1+1, and then the SolarWinds attack erupted, and we understood that we have something really meaningful in our hand, and we started Scribe Security. So actually the raison d'etre of Scribe was around actual detection and prevention of actual exploitations and tampering in software in the SDLC. And from then on, we expanded to do other things just as well.
Awesome. And I suppose that's kind of, it's almost that perfect story of, I don't want to say the word serendipity, because you're coming from an experience of the fact that, something bad's happened in the market, but we've recognized that actually there's a huge opportunity here. And I think kind of you touched base on something there, because application security is kind of renowned. I think people think it's a very noisy space. There's a lot of people offering solutions in there, but actually what you guys have done is recognize that there was a real gap within that software supply chain element. And I kind of want to dive into that a bit more, because how do you really differentiate yourself in such a noisy market?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, because as you mentioned rightfully, the space is very noisy and many people use different words to describe different things. And the way that we look at the market is more or less as follows. There is the traditional market of AppSec. AppSec, application security, is something that started maybe in the late 90s, let's say, and evolved at first rapidly and lately slowly. Because the technology has matured, and the technology is mainly about scanners, okay? Scanning code using scanning techniques like SAST, DAST, and later SCA, software composition analysis, etc. And there is one thing that is common to all the scanners, is to try to understand what are the known vulnerabilities, aka CVEs, that are associated with the components that are in your product. And there are today, and actually for the last 2 decades at least, like many companies, dozens of companies that are all about scanners, and all the incumbents are there just as well. In the last 4 years or so, we've seen the rise of something that was called an ASOC and now is called ASPM. Basically, it stands for Application Security Posture Management, and it says, let's take the different results from the different scanners, let's put all of them in one DB. It will help us to aggregate everything in one place, to do deduplication and correlation, and hopefully it will elevate triage and analysis to help with the remediation process. So ASPM today is basically around aggregation, prioritization, and orchestration of known vulnerabilities of scanners, or SAS, DAS, SCA, etc. And I would say that everything that I described so far, this is what you would call, this is the world of OWASP, okay? And there, in parallel, there has been an evolvement in how we look at software supply chain security. And this is more maybe on the lines of OpenSSF, which is another organization by the Linux Foundation. And this was mainly around trust, compliance, detection, and prevention. It contain other technology stones and other approaches. It's not so much about scanning. I mean, they're using, of course, SCA results, but it is a lot about understanding what happened and gating bad stuff from going to production. So you could see there code signing mechanisms such as SIGSTOR using the organization PKI, integrity checks, provenance checks, the entire world of attestations, and namely in total attestations, which is a kind of attestation for provenance and integrity, and the entire world of guardrails, policies code for SDLC, and gating capabilities. Gating capabilities meaning failing a build, or stopping bad stuff in the admission controller from going all the way to the production or to the end user. Another aspect of it was compliance. It was more about governance, how you make sure that the policy, the controls that you have set in place were followed through as required, and how you can testify to it, how you can demonstrate in an unequivocal manner that you have met all the SDLC controls and policies that you agreed on. And this is where you can find SSDF and SALSA and other such frameworks. Another aspect was the trust, and this is a multi-organizational problem because it is not enough that you know what's going on in the software that you deliver. Your customer needs to know what's risk they inherit from you. And the entire world of SBOM sharing is today under trust. And here I don't mean SBOM in the sense that how you generate SBOM, because this is the SEA part. I mean the part where how you manage SBOM, how you understand and defer risk from SBOM, how you can make useful, how you can make SBOM useful. And this is where trust started from, and now it evolves into how you can testify to best practices of SDLC based on attestations, where there are SBOM, software bill of materials, are only one type of attestation, but there are many others. So this is the market landscape. As I mentioned earlier, we started from detection and prevention, and then we understood very early, along with the first executive order from 3 years ago, that compliance is just the other side of the coin of prevention, because you still use the same technology building blocks. You still need to understand integrity and provenance and signing and all this, but also to guardrail controls. And the main difference is that in prevention, you are more focused on the stuff that went wrong and you want to stop it. And compliance, you want to generate a statement of compliance with the thumbs up. We've done everything all right. And trust was just a natural extension for us. Very early, we adopted SBOM with everything, and then we did everything else, all the attestation of best practices. And then I need to say that the market made us go more to also to the ASPM part. And today we are doing aggregation and prioritization of risk in a similar manner to other SPMs. However, we look at the risk very holistically. So we are not interested only in the risk of the vulnerabilities, but also in the risk that is associated with your CI/CD pipelines, with the security gaps, the security posture, and also with the SDLC processes. For example, was there a code review for every commit? Was there a last-minute commit after you already ran your SAST? Because you need to understand that attackers many times look like a clueless or careless developers. And you want to make sure that the processes that you've set in place are followed through, or you need to understand why not.
You actually mentioned something there, because there's so much to unpack really when you look at it, and I think kind of can sometimes be the confusion is why it's such a noisy market. It's kind of like, well, that's because there's a lot of different things to kind of be protecting here, especially if you're looking at all the different endpoints and stuff. But and as you say, that's just one side of the coin. But you mentioned something about the fact that you kind of had to listen to the market and follow the demand, and I think that's one thing that's really challenging about cybersecurity. And technology in general, but even more specific to cyber, because it is such a fast-paced industry. Now, you guys have been named one of the top cybersecurity innovator companies to watch in 2025, so you're clearly doing something right. But how is it that you're keeping up with that momentum and keeping an offering that's super relevant for such a I suppose, kind of a churning industry?
Yes, well, I will say something that I think that every startup say, I really mean it, but I guess that everybody really mean it. We really listen to our customers, okay? Um, and So this is one. So you need to really understand what are the real problems that your customers deal with now and how you can make their lives easier. However, I would say that many cybersecurity practitioners can say that they want only the stuff that they can imagine from what they already know. Okay, so in a sense, you also need to bring your understanding of the problem and show them a better way to solve it. Okay. Now, after you do that, you still need to listen and to understand why maybe it would be hard to do it or how could it be improved. But if you only follows the common buzzwords and the common chase in the market, you will end up to be a Me Too company. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we did only that, today we've been just a regular ASPM or a traditional scanner. And the reason that we are not there is because there were already many companies that did it, and obviously the problem has not been solved, and we wanted to really solve it. We really wanted to stop attacks such as the SolarWinds attack or the 3CX or the code cove attack, like this kind of attacks, and not only help with chasing vulnerabilities, which part of our platform does, because we listen to the market, but this was never enough, and it's not enough today. And if you want to do something special, then you need to educate the market, which is always hard, about better ways to do it. Okay, so for example, we started from the harder. I think that today maybe it was a mistake, but this is what we did. We started from the harder problem, and the harder problem was to automate into the DevOps toolchain the mitigation, the detection, the prevention, the compliance, and the everything actually. Okay, so in a way, we started from being more a DevSecOps platform than an AppSec platform. And later on, once we had all the information and proprietary information that others did not have, such as signing everything and signing the configuration files and signing the artifacts and understanding the dependencies and the remote dependencies and the integrity and provenance at every stage and signed SBOM at every stage, like these types of unique data. And after we connected all the dots into a lineage graph of all the pipelines, then we could do beautiful things that were an advantage. And then to bring more value in the application security side of the things. For example, AI. Okay, so AI is yet another buzzword that means many things, many things to many people. But the important thing is what are you using it for, and more importantly, what data does it have to run on, so it can generate actionable insights and actually real information that is not just available for you otherwise. And I think that the reason that we started from developing a suite of collectors that are deployed throughout the SDLC that allow to generate unique data that other did not, and then from there we expanded to generate and collect any type of data from the pipelines, from the SDLC, of the artifacts. It allows us later to keep up to pace by integrating AI capabilities that now had very informative data to run on. Okay, so we released not long ago our AI agentic ASPM remote engineer. It's kind of a chatbot that acts as a AppSec security engineer or DevSecOps engineer, that you ask questions on what's going on in your SDLC, and it helps you to prioritize and remediate. And the reason that it works well is because it has all this huge lake of security attestations to run on. It knows everything because we call, outside than being an AI, it knows everything because the data has everything in it, the data lake, okay? And this is why it's so powerful, not only because it's like AI, because we are using what everybody is using, right? The generative AI models. So our models are not unique, okay? I'm putting it right here and there, and very plainly, but the data is unique and the knowledge graphs are unique, and this is what makes the insights so powerful.
Yeah, and I suppose kind of what you're really highlighting there. There's a couple of things. One of them is, clearly to be able to keep that momentum, stay relevant, you've got to leverage the technology that's being given access to you. I suppose if we were looking at time when cloud was the new thing, if you weren't able to adopt cloud into your technology and your platforms, you were going to get lost behind. I think it's very much the same with AI. It's now become that new thing of, well, actually, you can. It's just the expectation that you're integrating this and you're implementing it within your existing technology and leveraging it to your advantage. But the other thing you're touching on there really is the data-centric piece. And I think so much of cybersecurity is driven around accurate data, but also actionable, accurate data, things that you can work with. And from the sounds of it, that's again something that's allowed you to keep up with that momentum of recognizing kind of the customer needs and where you can continue to evolve the platform. So to be honest, Ruby, really all valuable insights. And like I say, I think this is such a noisy space that sometimes it's important to take that step back and have a moment to reflect on where are the actual key vulnerabilities that maybe aren't being assessed. And I suppose that could kind of lead to the question in terms of what you would say of if there's kind of listeners listening in and they're resonating with some of what you're saying. I mean, what would you say kind of the key next steps are to identifying if it's a product like what you guys offer that's really going to be relevant to them?
Yeah, well, if there is one thing that I can share, at least my insight about what's going to be impactful for security leaders, is that most cybersecurity products start more or less with the same way. It's all about visibility, okay? Like understand what's going on, have an end-to-end visibility, and actually this is very important. I totally agree. This is very, very important, and visibility is like the basis, okay? But I think that visibility that leads to prioritization and orchestration, this is one way to look at it. The other way is to say, okay, we need to automate the actions. And I think this is really important. It's different. It's more on the lines of how you automate the mitigation. And in our space, you need to automate it into the SDLC, into the CI/CD pipelines. In our space, you need to automate it elsewhere, but you need to automate it, okay? And I think that this is very important in software supply chain security and with product security, because what happens is that the security teams usually delegate the responsibility to the developers, and they provide them something so they can handle vulnerabilities as closer to the source as possible, which is a good approach. However, it is doomed to fail in many ways, because developers really don't care, and they will never care enough, and they don't understand enough security in order for this to be effective. It doesn't mean that you don't need to do it. It just means that you cannot count on it. When shit hits the fan, you're going to be accountable if you're the security guy. So the other way and it's a complementary way to do that, is to automate guardrails. So even if the developers are good but make innocent mistakes, or if they feel entitled and they make shortcuts, or maybe they are ignorant, or they don't care, they have training, or maybe they are just using Copilot and Cursor and all these AI generative copilots that help them code and now also build the software. So many times they don't even know what's risks are in it because they did not really code it. So the only way to handle this is to put guardrails around everything, around the vulnerabilities, around the licenses, around the reputation, around everything that you care for, but also around the processes, also around the tool chain. And this is what SDLC security really is. It's not about giving a tool to developers, telling them, okay, get rid of vulnerabilities, and this means that my product security is good. You need to look at the product security very holistically to say, what is it for you? Actually, it's many best practices. And in Scribe Hub, we have 180 policy as code controls that you can embed into the DevSecOps DevOps tool chains, and gate it. So in the end of the day, and this is my 2 cents to security practitioners, no matter if you're using Scribe or something else, you need to make sure that the product that you deliver is secure and that you can demonstrate that it is secure, because at some point in the future somebody will ask to see that, and you just need to think about it in a holistic way, and see how you can implement it. That's it.
Yeah. No, awesome. Again, really insightful. I think sometimes it's just about kind of, I suppose, being able to prioritize okay, these are the actual main issues that we're facing. And Ruby, what I'd actually really like to close out on is taking a slightly different pivot, because we've really been able to get quite technical there and explore kind of the realities of this specific vertical right now. And like we say, some of the key vulnerabilities and the solutions that Scribe are offering, and kind of, I suppose, the direction that market's taking. But I want to kind of reflect and look back on the journey that you've had, because we kickstarted by highlighting the tenure that you've had within the space, and you've definitely kind of somebody who really understands not only the technology aspects, but I suppose the evolution of this industry. And I'd kind of like to say, what's one lesson or like mindset shift that everyone in cybersecurity leadership, whether that be executives, leaders, or founders, should kind of embrace?
I would say automate everything that you can. Because the talent is always short. There are always not enough people, and I think that manual processes are destined to fail at some point, because people make mistakes, and also because attackers will get there sooner or later. It's not if, it's when. And when it happens, you need to make sure that you have deployed everything in place in time before things got astray, that will allow you to automate the response. Okay, and then you have a chance. If you didn't do it, if you're just chasing after events, and now sometimes you don't even have the data to conduct forensics, they just need to run after the data, and then you need to understand what happened. It's much, much, much harder in cybersecurity. If you've worked hard before the weekend, you can rest on the weekend. And I think that the way to do it is to make sure that you have collected the data that needs to be collected. This needs to be automated, and then that you've put the guardrails that needs to be put in place. This needs to be automated, and then that you have defined what should consider mandatory and what's not, and whatever is considered mandatory needs to be gated, and this should be automated. So I think that's really cybersecurity today is a lot about automation.
Yeah.
And if you try to do hard labor actions manually, I mean, just not scalable, no way it's going to work at scale. And I think that this is something that for founders and entrepreneurs, I would say that if you found something that can be automated and provide a lot of value, it was something. And for the cyber practitioners, I think that if you still do this stuff manually, you're probably doing it wrong.
I think what a piece to close out on, and super, super relevant as well. But Ruby, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. It's obviously clear that the future of cybersecurity is depending on leaders who are pushing boundaries, driving innovation, and embracing, I suppose, that change in that technology. So to our listeners, I hope you found this conversation as inspiring and as formative as I did. Make sure to subscribe, share this episode with your network, and make sure to follow us for more deep dives with leaders that are shaping cybersecurity. So again, thank you, Ruby, and to our listeners, until next time.
Thank you, Katie.